This is it. This is your last chance. So tuck in your t-shirt and pull up your pants. I'm America's last great white hope. I don't need to smoke no dope. This rap isn't coming from a Maybach or a mansion. I'm not the second coming of Eminem. I'm the second coming of a Jack Charlie Manson. This is Mark Bell from SuperTraining.tv, Super Training Gym, the strongest gym in the West, answering more questions today for the Power Project, brought to you by HowMuchYouBench.net, the Slingshot, and the only strength magazine in the world, thepowermagazine.com, and BSN. The question for today comes from two different people, but it's the same question about. One guy has a question about being tall, and one guy has a question about being uneven. He says that one leg's longer than the other. He's not exactly sure if he's cut out to power lift. He says he has a couple issues with his back and so on and so forth, and that he lifts kind of unevenly. And this guy is only like 16 years old. So what I would say to you is screw whatever abilities or disabilities that you're born with, and just fight through them. And whatever doctor you went to that told you have one leg longer than the other, so what? I think most people are uneven. Most people have some sort of dysfunction in one of their major joints, hip, knee, elbow, shoulder, or whatever. Just try to always adhere to training with proper form, learning how to do your craft, learning how to do your trade, whether it's powerlifting, bodybuilding, or Olympic lifting. Learn how to do the exercises properly and continue to make progress over a period of time. Keep in mind, if you're not always maxing out in the gym, it's easier to maintain PRs over a long period of time. If you keep working towards building strength and you keep working towards training heavy, but not necessarily going to a full max, you can continue to make progress slow and steady over a long period of time. Now, it is important to take those gambles and take those risks and build self-confidence. That, after all, that's what a lot of this is about, is building confidence towards your goals, building self-esteem and self-confidence, and keeping yourself from being scared of the big weights. That is true. That is very, very important. And there's times to go for it, and there's times to not go for it. Remember, what I always say is just because you can doesn't mean you should. But also, just because you can doesn't mean you shouldn't. So there's a fine line right there. Sometimes I know that can be a little confusing to you guys. But if you do a lift and you do it really easy, and you do it for an easy single, and it looks like you could have done it for an easy double or triple, then of course throw a little bit more weight on there. But the point is, throw a little bit more weight on there and not a lot more weight. This question is from Matt. Matt is 6'5". He says he's real tall for powerlifting, and that is a giant for powerlifting. Even myself, at approximately 6 feet tall, 6 foot if I'm lucky, as my wife pointed out, and bigger, stronger, faster. Even at 6 feet tall, it's fairly tall for the sport of powerlifting. And I found for myself, I had to get myself up to about 290 pounds to be optimal. So for you at 6'5", what you need to realize, and your question is about mobility. Now, Matt says he's having trouble with the squat and having trouble with mobility in the squat. And here's what I think people need to realize is that mobility is masked by many different things. Just because you can't bend down and touch your toes doesn't necessarily mean your hamstrings are tight. And just because you can bend down and touch your toes doesn't mean that you have good length and good mobility through your back and through your hamstrings. In fact, a lot of times it actually means the exact opposite. I've seen some people really round over and do some funky shit just to touch their toes. And I mean, people can round their upper and lower back like crazy, not get a ton of stretch through their hamstrings, and still touch their toes effectively. So mobility issues are oftentimes masked by a few things: the inability to move properly and the inability to be strong. A lot of times you just ain't strong enough. You just don't have the strength to maintain the proper positions. And this lack of mobility is manifesting itself through dysfunction from other parts of your body than you might guess. So you asked about the squat. So let's talk about the squat. So in the squat, The mobility, what I see a lot of dysfunction in the upper body, more dysfunction than you could ever even possibly imagine. Dysfunction in the upper body is going to cause dysfunction and mayhem throughout the rest of the body. That's why Jesse Burdick, myself, Kelly Starrett, that's why a lot of us are teaching the sexy double chin position. Okay, maybe that wasn't that sexy, but you get the point. You want to try to have a neutral head position during a squat, during a deadlift. The reason for this is when there's dysfunction anywhere, there's going to be dysfunction that manifests itself in other areas as the weights go up and up and up. And they can become limiting factors. Keep in mind, each person is different. So when I say these things, they are not absolutes. You do not absolutely have to do the double chin technique. Some guys like to raise their chin up a little bit when they lift. But the main thing here with the head positioning is that your head doesn't scoot real far forward. That's when we start to really run into trouble. If you are doing a deadlift, or we're talking about squat. If you're doing a squat and you push your chin back, that's not a problem because we're not really getting overextended. If you push your chin out and up, now we're talking about some trouble. Now we're talking about some issues, and now we're talking about some retardation, and we don't want that. Although it's good to have a little bit of that, just so you're kind of unaware of what you're doing. Sometimes that can be a great thing. But so keep in mind, errors in the upper body can cause errors in the lower body. So now, what we need you to do is we need you to go through good squatting positions with good form. You need to figure out ways of doing that, perhaps without the straight bar. So if you have a cambered bar, which you should have one from RogueFitness.com, or a safety squat bar from RogueFitness.com, or if you want to be cheap and you want to take the cheaper route, you can start practicing with some kettlebells. But you should be able to take a kettlebell or a 35-pound plate, 45-pound plate, stick it out in front of you as you're going downward in a squat, and you should be able to get it out in front of you about eye level, and you should be able to break parallel in a squat without any problems. You'll be shocked. That acts as a counterbalance. And I know this because I used to do it with Quinn, my little girl, who's now 6, a little too heavy for that now. But I used to do that with her when she was a baby. To get up off the couch, I'd stick her out way in front of me, and I could get up off the couch easier. And then I used to do some squats with her to get some pain out of my hip. It sounds ridiculous. What a great use for a kid, right? I used to stick her out in front of me, and I'd squat down well below parallel, 4 or 5 inches below parallel, which is very, very difficult for me. For those of you who've seen me squat, you kind of understand. But with the cambered bar especially, you're going to be able to squat much deeper, much more deeper-ist than you would be able to with the straight bar for most people. And the reason is because of that shitty dysfunction that we see in the upper body. The shoulders, the elbows, the wrists, all this stuff. So you said you're 6'5". So at 6'5", we got to do a couple things. We got to work that barbell down our back lower. I would imagine at 6'5", you're probably like 180, 200 pounds, maybe 220, which is still nothing, basically. You're still built like a twig. Let's get your thumb off the bar, pull your thumb off the bar, and get a grip like yay. Get your hands out a little bit wider than whatever you're used to doing, probably out past where the power rings are. Now, this is all without seeing you squat, but it's just a wild guess that you're probably squatting like an idiot, and you're probably squatting with the barbell up on your neck. We need to get the shoulders, we need to get the elbows down a little bit. We need to get the bar low on your back, 2 or 3 inches lower than what you're used to. When you unrack the weight, it's okay to have a little bit of a soft knee when you first unrack it, and you can kind of lean into the lift a little bit because you're going to have to do that in order to keep the bar from rolling down your back. And as soon as you unrack it, as soon as you feel comfortable, as soon as you walk back and set up and everything else, then you can straighten out the legs and you can kind of chest up a little bit. You're going to want to keep your head neutral / down on this particular lift. It's very important on this lift because the bar is low on your back. Now, with the bar being low on your back, as you start to descend, you are more than likely going to lean forward a little bit. But we need your hips to lower throughout the entire range of motion. So think about your hips the entire time. Force the knees out the entire time. Your knees do not have to go out excessively if you have good hips, but your knees do need to travel out towards where your feet are. Knees out, knees out, knees out. Sit back into it. Open up the best you can. If you have to, if you have really limiting range of motion, you might have to do a little bit of a dip. So you're going to come down, stop yourself, dip, and come back up. That's the way I squat. So if you want to watch some of those, just check them out on my YouTubes. By the way, if you're not subscribed to my YouTubes, then you're just a prick. Subscribe to the YouTubes, my friends. It's for free. Anyway, so that's going to be the way you want to squat. Make sure that bar is not rolling on you. Make sure you have it set just in the right spot. Make sure you have your stomach nice and tight. Fill your stomach up with air. Push your stomach out against the belt. And practice, practice, practice. If you feel like you really suck, do 95 pounds for 5 sets of 10. Do 135 for 5 sets of 5. Do 185 for 5 sets of 5. Do 225 for 5. I'm not sure what your strength level is, so we might be already topping you out early, but keep the weights light, but learn how to squat properly. Have 1 day a week where you squat heavy, have 1 day a week where you squat medium, and have 1 day a week where you squat light. Do that for like the next 3 months. Get that squat down, learn it, make sure you master it. The 1 day a week where you squat heavy, you can add more volume to your training. The other 2 days, get in and out of those squat sessions really quickly. Just to give you a small prescription, you can do 5 sets of 5 on your heavy day. On your medium day, you can do 3 sets of 8, and on your light day, you can do 4 sets of 15, something like that. But keep the weights ridiculously light on those 2 days, the medium and the light day. Keep them light enough to where your form is flawless. A lot of times, guys need some weight on their back in order to get down in proper position. Remember, you're trying to get your body to move properly. We're trying to create proper movement patterns. If you have trouble with the straight bar, use a kettlebell, a safety squat bar, or a cambered bar. Strength is never a weakness, and that is it from supertraining.tv.